something drew his attention, or he felt he had this urge to look towards this clearing, and there was this creature standing there. It was April 1993, 11 p.m. Sandra, her last name was not given, had taken her dogs for a walk on the Mezenberg beach in Cape Town, South Africa. Walking her dogs, one of which was quite vicious, was part of her routine, though rarely did she go this late, so a family friend, Mark, offered to join her. They had made their way down to the bottom of the beach where the lake goes into the sea. They were standing right at the joining point. Sandra had taken notice of a strange light. I had been watching a white light for quite a while as we were walking towards Handcliffe Mountains, and I said to Mark, "What is that light?" He was watching it too as we were walking, and where the water gets too deep, we stood and watched it. The light, she recalled, was stationary and remained that way for quite a while. They initially assumed that it might be the top of an aerial or something they had put up, as it was, she noted, very bright, almost blinding. Then something strange happened. Suddenly it went upwards very fast, stayed still, then dropped again and rushed off to the left, then to the right. By now we were transfixed. We couldn't figure out what it was. As they stood staring at the thing, they were surprised when a beam came out of it, from the center. She claims that it was a very narrow beam and had a translucent sheen to it. The light itself was blinding, but the beam was much gentler, lighting up only where it landed on the water and not around it. I could see where it hit the water. It was a very thin beam. The light, or whatever it was not too far above the sea, probably about 50 meters or 150 feet from where I was, and it was hovering very low, right at the base of the mountains. It was definitely not a helicopter. While they watched, the object stopped and remained stationary for a long time, then shot straight towards them at an incredible speed. I turned and bolted for the bathing boxes which were on the beach further back. The light just came at us with an almost devastating rage. Mark was shouting, "Don't run, don't run, let's see what it is." The bright white light was a transfixing thing, and that is what zoomed toward us. It was so blinding I couldn't see anything as it came. I turned to run, and as I blinked, even with my eyes shut, I could still see the light inside my eyelids. It just came rushing at us, and I didn't notice the beam or anything. I just turned and ran. Sandra was surprised to see Mark was not running. He just remained in place, watching as the light receded as fast as it had come. It scooted back to the shelter of the mountain, and then it sped off in the direction of the airport, flying low out of our sight. There was no color to the light. It was just a blinding white light. I don't remember watching the dogs at all, or whether they were aware of the light, and if their behavior changed. This sounds like a fairly standard account, except there was more. Something strange did occur at the same time, she recalled. For quite a while, Mark and I didn't even talk. We were both concentrating on this bright light zooming around, becoming more and more fascinated by it. It was a very cold night and the wind was blowing, so there was nobody on the sands. But after I ran and the light had gone back and disappeared, I walked back to where Mark was standing, still in the same place, and as I looked to my left, there was a man standing in the water. He had no waders on, though the water was up to his thighs. He just stood there staring in our direction. He looked at us, then walked out of the water and disappeared. He didn't have a fishing rod. He had no equipment at all. He was dressed in ordinary clothes, a jacket and pants, but no shoes. We saw him clearly, just standing thigh-high deep in the water. Sandra recalled that his body was facing the direction they were, towards the light, though he was looking over at them. I don't know how long he had been there, as we were not aware of him, being transfixed by the light blinding our eyes. Mark and I decided afterwards that he may have been trying to take his life, and we disturbed him. He wasn't drunk and he didn't stagger. We watched him moving out of the vley, and that was very fast-moving water. but he didn't stagger at all. He was only 10 meters or 30 feet away from me, but I could see his face had no expression on it, as if he was not with us. That's what made us think he might have been trying to end it all. As I saw him, I got a heck of a fright and went, "Oh!" But he just looked at me. I said, "Sorry, you gave me a fright," but he didn't react at all. He just turned his back and walked out and disappeared. We could not help wondering if the two events were connected. The man was definitely watching the object, facing exactly the way we were facing. Sandra was interviewed by Pamela Puxley, a researcher who wrote for UFO Afrinews magazine. She was insistent that Mark, who had served in the Air Force, was equally astonished by the object. He should have been able to identify the object if it had been a helicopter, but he couldn't. He thought it was just an aerial light rushing around. At one time he thought it might be a search helicopter, but the rate of its rising and falling and moving left and right convinced him it was too erratic and too fast to be a helicopter. He could hardly follow its movements. One minute it was here, the next it zoomed there, then back again. It was over Somerset West Bay, or somewhere like that. Then it was up the mountains, over Hancliffe, and then it went over land towards the airport. I know that because I have seen planes going that way. When asked to describe the craft, Sandra claimed that it was shaped like an almost side-on frisbee. The weather that evening had been quite foul, the wind was howling, and it had been raining. When I first read this account, I thought it might very well have been a coincidence, that they had just arrived there at the same time this other person had, and, given that it was dark, they just hadn't noticed him. Except wouldn't the dogs have alerted them? Granted, it is possible that the dogs had alerted them, but Sandra and her friend were so invested in the strange object that they hadn't picked up on it. And if it is the case that they had interrupted this fellow who was in the process of ending it, then it would place a greater importance on the sighting overall. Did the UFO draw them to the spot in order to disrupt this man's activity in an effort to save his life? If that is the case, then this might count as a type of alien intervention, a guardian angel from beyond the stars. But why? What would one man's life matter to beings traveling from distant worlds? It would be akin to rescuing an ant from a forest clearing on fire. There are such reports. Fishermen, hikers claim that they are led to rescue by a strange light. I've even covered a few on this channel. Even more odd, I guess, maybe the figure had been placed there by the object. Exactly why, I have no idea. This case is very strange when you start to peel back the layers. Maybe the reason why they didn't notice him was because he wasn't there. Maybe that's why they never saw him. She never noticed somebody walking in the water. Maybe that's why the dogs didn't alert them. Because when they first got there and noticed the light, there was no one else there. They were alone. And maybe at some point, when this light appeared and came at them, maybe it was in the process of dropping someone off. And maybe that's why this man wasn't wearing shoes when he walked out of the water. There's a lot of missing 411 reports where people are found, a lot of times near water, and they're barefoot. And it made me wonder if maybe this is, they were somehow kind of entangled in one of these cases where, in this case, I guess, this guy had been returned, possibly to the place where he had been taken. I don't know. If they did, kind of stage an intervention and help this guy out, that's one thing. But it does make me wonder if he was actually dropped off there. It was 2017. Student Patrick Bell had just graduated from university in Liverpool. He had grown up in rural Northumberland near the town of Morpeth. As a child, he and his friends would spend their days exploring the surrounding area of their village, which was mostly fields and small wooded areas. There was one spot they liked to frequent quite often, Upon returning home, he opted to stay with his parents at their house. He discovered that while away at university that he had a hard time living alone, and was hoping to use that time to work on his mental health. I would spend a lot of time in nature, going for walks in our old haunts and generally sitting and listening to the natural world. It was during one of these treks that Bell experienced something truly chilling. On one of my jaunts in the wilderness, I sat down in the crook of the base of a tree that overlooked a watery, grassy area of clearing, hoping to spot some deer. The clearing must have been about 200 meters or 660 feet away. The tree was unusually comfortable, and instead of seeing deer, I rather quickly fell asleep. I suddenly started out of my sleep and felt as if an overwhelming terror had come over me and was pulling me to look at the clearing. Bell wrote to the Fortean Times about this strange experience. He noted that when he awoke, he was suddenly engulfed with fear. What he saw next horrified him. As I sat there breathing heavily, I saw movement. A creature, similar to a large wolf, stood within the clearing. It appeared to be covered in the moss and debris of the forest. Its bones seemed to be semi-visible through the matted fur and rot of the creature's body. It turned its head as if surveying the landscape, and when its head moved, I could see nothing but blackened pits for eyes, though at that distance it was hard to tell if it had no eyes or fully black eyes. After that, it simply lumbered away over a nearby raised area of wood and disappeared from my line of sight. I could do nothing but sit stunned at the encounter. As the creature left, my feeling of fear faded. Patrick quickly rose and began his walk home. In the moment, he resolved not to share his encounter with anyone, though he eventually reneged on this. He remains unsure of how to interpret his encounter. Whether it was some sort of werewolf, forest spirit, or sleep-induced hallucination, I will never know, but it has been my sole encounter with inexplicable high strangeness, despite my returning to those woods many times since. The witness described the creature he saw as appearing like an upright werewolf, though in a visible state of decay, with bones appearing through its matted fur and rotting flesh, a sort of zombie werewolf, as it were. I'm not aware of too many reports involving zombie werewolves, not in the UK, not anywhere, though I have heard of such a thing in regards to some Wendigo and Skinwalker reports that have been compiled over the years. Is this what Patrick encountered in those woods that day back in 2017? Or was it some type of sleep-induced hallucination, as I'm sure some of my more skeptical watchers will insist, given that the encounter occurred in the moments after the witness came out of a sleeping state. I have to admit, though, in all of the sleep paralysis type accounts I've read, they always occur in bed. This is the first in which somebody sleeping in the woods awoke to see, in this case often a clearing, one of these nighttime critters. Whatever it was, it doesn't sound like the creature realized Patrick was there, which I guess is the best outcome, real or otherwise, that Patrick could have asked for. As I stated in my video, I don't know of too many cases in which somebody encounters a type of decaying cryptid. In this case, he said it looked like a werewolf, but it was in a state of decay. Bones were sticking out, its flesh was rotting. He couldn't tell if it had eyes or if it was just black eyes. Either way, it didn't seem to know that he was there, it didn't acknowledge him. It just sort of wandered away. He was coming out of a sleep, when he saw this thing. He said he felt this overwhelming fear, which a lot of people who have like sleep paralysis and those types of hallucinations will say. But he doesn't mention that he was frozen. He wasn't paralyzed. It was just that he woke up, he looked out, something drew his attention, or he felt he had this urge to look towards this clearing, and there was this creature standing there. And it was sniffing the air. Maybe it was sniffing for him. I don't know. But either way, it just sort of walked off. And I do wonder what might have happened had it become aware of the fact that he was there. Would Would it have allowed itself to be seen? I don't know.